Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Slacker. Yes, that's the name of the movie, starring, written, produced, and directed by Richard Linklater. Now, anybody that wants to know what this movie's supposed to be, this is the directorial debut of Richard Linklater, who went off to do movies that I reviewed a couple of: A Scanner Darkly for Philip K. Dick and Boyhood for its independence. And there's going to be some movies I have seen, and there's going to be some I haven't seen. This is one of the ones I have not seen, as this must be artsy directorial debut of Richard Linklater. I'll get to more about the other ones when I get there. Let's get into this movie. The movie opens with the bus arrival in the city of Austin, Texas, where we don't have names of characters or what the character's supposed to be, as I'm going to call them by their real names or something that they do throughout the show. As the one character arrives in Austin, takes a taxi cab, and talks to the taxi cab driver the whole time. And I admire that from the star writer, producer, and director Richard Linklater. Yes, that was him. That was acting in that scene. And as I'm leading to believe it's him, and this is a movie about life, and that's a thing Linklater does a great job at, making movies about life and conversations, while the cab driver doesn't say a damn thing the entire scene while he's monologuing, which is tremendous, sure. He sees a woman getting roadkilled right while Linklater runs away, which is kind of a dick move. And the guy who ran over the woman gets home, and I get the impression he was the one who ran her over. And to be honest with you, I don't think we get to know any of these people, as again, this movie isn't about the characters. And Richard Linklater's first film, which happens to be this, but this felt like a very first draft. And the studio decided to go with it, kind of like what George Lucas did with the Star Wars prequels, for example. And the cops comes to arrest the son who was fucking responsible for running over his mother, which I think that's what that previous scene was about in the first place. And I do like how they explain it, but it takes a long time to get to the point, which was a problem I had from the get-go. We get a woman whom I'm going to call Jennifer because that's the actress's name, going to a coffee shop while three dude men, as he walks with a guy who has been on the moon since the 1950s. And I enjoyed the conversations, as this movie from start to finish is about the conversations until this guy missing his friend gets to a friend's house, and it is slowly paced for sure, but Richard Linklater kept me interested, as this is an interesting movie about life. A Bush basher bashes on George Bush Sr., the President of the United States from 1989 to 1993, which is where this movie takes place in, while a couple walks in as they read something like a postcard from the Addams Family, and the other postcards in this movie follows different people in different places, which feels like a style of Richard Linklater. An ultimate loser, that's what he's called, bumps into Stephanie from Dallas, and they chat until a pop smear pusher interrupts with a piece of pop smear from Madonna, and come on, that looks like a fake. But I could be wrong about that, though. While the pusher brings up what she saw on the TV, and I did like that scene for the acting, and the acting in this is pretty good. We move on to the ultimate loser going to the t-shirt terrorist, as we move on to an anti-traveler and a woman wanting to leave a country to sidewalk sidekick devoted follower to hell. Even a happy-go-lucky guy doesn't get luck by getting newspaper, as he goes in a diner and sits around people who need some fucking help while repeating themselves, and this scene did feel a little annoying. And this movie is kind of all over the place while we're following different people in each scene. And the more the movie goes and the more moves on to different scenes, the more confused I am. I like the movie, which is odd for a Richard Linklater film. We move on to kids peeping in a house and robbing a soda machine. And we move on to three different guys dumping a typewriter over a bridge in the water, which felt a little bit weird in my opinion. A woman gives a homeless man the Coke her boyfriend gave to a homeless man right in front of him, which is the wrong thing to do in front of someone who got the Coke for her to begin with, while she needs to get a book to read before going to the cinema together. And Conspiracy, a go-go author, makes her a tad bit uncomfortable while talking with her, and if it were me, I would be uncomfortable as well. And I don't really like the woman with her boyfriend segment because she comes off kind of like a bitch. She gets the conspiracy guy and a guy fixing his car until a driver drives by the house of the guy fixing the car and going in another car to a different place to get some parts of his car. We see a hitchhiker going in a car for a true call because he was happy his stepfather died and he was coming from his funeral, and once he's dropped off, he encounters a couple with a video camera as one of is a video interviewer, and another one is a cameraman, and they ask weird questions to him as they offend him going in a store while one guy plays an arcade game and stops a shoplifter while an anarchist along with his daughter walking past them. And how is this working? Well, it's because we follow different people as this is working, but not great in my opinion. A burglar robs the anarchist and his daughter at their own home and says to him the police will do no fucking good, which can happen in life, and asks him to go on a walk with him, which felt random for damn sure. The burglar gets back to the getaway accomplice and another person owning a Cadillac while we move on to a video backpacker looking at some TVs with a porno of a guy slapping his girlfriend while she's choking him to death, which felt like a couple of pretty bizarre scenes in my opinion. But again, I'm enjoying myself viewing this movie. We see a video of a grad student talking about frustration to the point he gets a gun in the picture and shoots the camera filming that shit as the customer walks home and bumps into a woman who is having a breakthrough day and gives him a couple of cards while a guy fills some teacups in the teacups. And we follow the two women briefly to a cafe and while they order some drinks and potato chips. And we move on to a Scooby-Doo philosopher and a Papa Smurf talking about Scooby-Doo versus the Smurfs. I actually like that scene for the cartoon reference, as this scene works along with following the two ladies to the cafe. We see some woman questioning happiness for reasons while one has a fear of rejection, and a smoking writer, as this movie to this point is, I'm realizing, is plotless, I mean. But I'm okay with this. Steve with the van picks them up and takes them to a club where he's not on the list and gets rejected, while a woman with nice shoes lets the girls in, and a couple of women ride away on bicycles and an arm-licking stamper, and we move on to some pixel vision, which looks kind of bad in my opinion, and we see a band playing kind of good, as I sort of like the music. An anti-artist bumps into a photographer of Dairy Queen as he leaves with a late-night pickup, and he gets up early in the morning and sees someone watching the TV. And do I care what's going on here? Kind of, to be honest, because I like this movie as it's not the greatest Richard Linklater could ever come up with, in my opinion. I did find postmodern Paul Revere kind of funny, in my opinion, while we move on to someone shooting a Super 8 camera, with a Super 8 camera, I mean, while they get to go off on a cliff to a point, one camera is thrown off the cliff, and the climax was good, but not great, in my opinion. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 6.4 out of 10. This movie is about conversations and life, and not so much about the characters, as the audience don't know who any of them are at all, and that is kind of a problem. While Richard Linklater kept me interested in this movie, as in my opinion this is an interesting movie at times at best, despite sometimes it does take a long time to get to the point. The style of Richard Linklater works quite tremendously done in this movie, as this movie is pretty good acting by these actors, despite I don't know who any of them are, with an exception of Linklater himself at the first scene. The more we move on to different people and different scenes, the more confused I am, and the less I like the movie, as this is a recommendation to watch only once in your lifetime. And if you love film like the way I do, and this felt like a rough draft, and the studio decided to go with it, which doesn't make too much sense, but whatever. It's better than what George Lucas did. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Dazed and Confused. And until then, retro singing's not bad, dude, man.